Will Cain had a segment on his show where he basically like walked his viewers through the three steps, the three ways in which these tariffs are actually going to make America rich again. And he was wrong on every single point. Let's go ahead. Let's hear what he has to say.
Off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things.
So before we even get into this, you have to understand Donald Trump's viewpoint. He sees trade deficits as inherently harmful, which they are not. In trade, you pay money for something and you receive that thing. There is an exchange going on. The example that's floating around social media is you having a trade deficit with your coffee shop. If I go to the cafe up the block from me and give them $5, and I give them $5, I am in a trade deficit with my coffee shop. However, in return, I receive a cappuccino. I willingly create this trade deficit because I don't have a cappuccino maker. If I want to eliminate that trade deficit, I must go out and buy a Breville or a fucking Ninja. I must acquire a cappuccino maker. However, it is a more expensive purchase it is more expensive for me to purchase that cappuccino maker than it is for me to go out and get a cappuccino every 2 weeks. To satisfy that trade deficit requires a larger upfront investment. So trade deficits are not inherently a bad thing because, again, there is an exchange going on.
That was President Trump just moments ago. Now, being taken advantage of on the world stage currently is in flux, and this is what it looks like. Reportedly, these are the countries who have called and are willing to negotiate with America: Israel, Japan, United Kingdom, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, India, South Korea, and on, including the European Union. How about the countries that have chosen to retaliate with their tariffs on the United States? That list includes China.
The EU, I don't recall if I don't think this came out. I think this came out before the EU had retaliatory tariffs of their own on certain things, but the EU also leveled retaliatory tariffs against the United States. They were just far more limited than China. But again, the EU is America's lapdog. The EU, much like America, has a vested interest in keeping global trade as it is right now. They have a vested interest in keeping capitalism, liberal capitalism or Western capitalism, as the primary mode of doing trade.
Let's take a look at the Chinese index and how it behaved over the last 24 hours, down 7.3%. It was rough in Asia. The Hong Kong markets were down about 13%. But the path to peace and the path to negotiation seems to be more prosperous right now than the path of retaliation. Tariffs being the big story, they deserve more than a picture. They deserve a deep dive. That brings us to today's big three. What happens when you panic? You've panicked, I've panicked, we've all had a moment. What happens? The world closes in around you. Your vision narrows. You see only what's in front of your face. That's the same as it is for markets. Markets are voting mechanisms. They're short-term meters of people's sentiment, confidence versus panic. And one day tells you not very much about the future of the American economy. And there's a difference between markets and economies. That was
one day doesn't do anything. You're right. But the market has been going down ever since Trump came into office. It'd be different if it was literally just one day. The market, like Jamie Dimon woke up and was like, damn, I just fucking shit my pants in the middle of the night, and then he and then the market goes down because he's having a bad day. But the market is reacting to the volatility of Trump's presidency. I understand that the market is not indicative of the economy, but if the market continues to go down and continues to tank, you will have mass layoffs, or you will have less spending, mass layoffs, and next thing you know, it's fucking recession time, baby.
Laid out very well by Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what...
Yeah, they're going to go down because it's going to get more expensive to afford things. Like, things are going to get more expensive. The stock market does not mean anything to a majority of people, but the stock market reacting to the increased cost of living and the exacerbation of the affordability crisis, that is a tangible reason for people to be anxious, because it's going to be more expensive to live. And again, the possibility of a recession and the possibility of mass layoffs. All of this, remind you, all of this is the result of a policy decision. This was entirely avoidable. This is the biggest stock market crash. Well, it's the biggest since 2022, but really the biggest one since COVID. That was a legitimate extraneous circumstance, and the markets reacted that way for obvious reasons, a global fucking pandemic. But think of it like this, and I forgot who posted this tweet, but the market is down multiple percentage points because they believe that Donald Trump's presidency is more unpredictable than a fucking virus that killed more than 1 million people in the United States of America. Marco Rubio downplaying the potential negative effects of this is really fucking, it's really fucking sick and gross, because the ramifications are going to have real world impacts on the majority of Americans.
The rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. We need to get back to a time where we're a country that can make things, and to do that, we have to reset the global order of trade.
No, that's literally the worst fucking way to go about this. If you want to return to manufacturing things in the United States, you need to do tariffs in 2035 or 2040 or 2093 and start investing in a more robust manufacturing infrastructure in the United States. You would subsidize business to you would subsidize industrial business in the United States of America. And it's not like this is something that's entirely foreign to the government. Plenty of businesses get tremendous subsidies, whether they're agricultural, whether they're defense contractors, whether they're oil and gas, but it would just mean shifting some money around. But it would also, again, it would kind of be a little socialist. It would kind of, there would be a little socialism going on there. But Donald Trump is doing this in the most fucking ass backward and negligent way possible by putting the tariff before the manufacturing. This is like trying to drive a car, but literally all you have, this is literally like driving a car without a steering wheel. All you have is a gas pedal, no brake, no steering wheel. What the fuck are you going to do with that?
So while markets fluctuate, what are the fundamentals of the economy? It's been addressed by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It's been addressed by the Secretary of State. Here's what oil prices look like before the tariffs. They've been trending down. Oil prices down I think about 15% since the announcement of tariffs.
Holy shit. Dude, look at the fucking stark line there. Do you know why the oil prices are down, Will Cain? Actually, let's finish and see if he mentions why. Spoiler alert, he doesn't.
That matters to you when you go to the gas station. I would imagine it also matters to you when you go to the bank and look for a mortgage on your home. 30-year mortgage rates also.
Okay, so obviously he glossed over this tremendously huge piece of information. Oil prices are going down because the companies are bracing for less demand. Literally, what happened in COVID 5 fucking years ago? And we know that conservatives remember COVID. I know that Will Cain remembers it in particular because he was the one who posted about the stock market being up like 90% over the last 5 years. They are projecting a lack in demand. Mortgage rates, this is a fucking stupid conversation to have. If you are spending more money on everyday goods and you have less disposable income, how the fuck are you going to buy a house? How are you going to afford a place to live? And I say this as a homeowner. The only reason that my wife and I were able to afford this house is because we were able to save up a tremendous amount of money over all of the years that we worked. And it was largely because we were fortunate enough to live at home and not have to pay rent. We were exceptionally lucky. But here's the thing. If these tariffs go through, there is a non-zero chance that we lose our jobs. Then what? It doesn't fucking matter if the mortgage rates are going down when the cost of housing is not getting addressed. Additionally, Republicans do not have a plan to address the bloated cost of housing because they put fucking tariffs on Canadian lumber. We don't have trees. We do not have the trees here in the United States to build all of this fucking housing. The price of your house just went up 25%, buddy.
Like oil, trending lower. The fundamentals of the American economy, including unemployment, look strong, despite the fluctuations of the market. Now, it is worth as well looking for a bigger picture when it comes to markets. If panic is all we can see in front of our face, a plan is what we can see when we look at a bigger picture. Here's what happens in markets when they have bad days. There have been bear markets in our past, and the S&P 500 has looked at an average of the recovery over those bear markets. When you have a bad day, when you might hit a recession, and the average recovery time for one of these is 18.9 months. It's also worth saying
18.9 months. And he's talking about this like this is a fucking short period of time, knowing, or maybe he doesn't know, that the majority of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Most people will be evicted in 3 fucking months because that's all the money that they have to pay for their housing. Dude, you're missing the entire fucking picture. I know it's hard for Will Cain to relate because he's a very successful media personality who probably doesn't have to worry about his 401k or about his job being cut, but to just think that 19 months is a period of time that people can weather during economic uncertainty is just really it's like violently it's violently out of touch. It is also worth noting that the talks about the stock market don't really fucking matter when you realize that the major recession in 2020 happened because of a global pandemic. Before that, the major recession in 2008 happened for, obviously a lack of government regulation and the subprime mortgage crisis. But there have been very few instances where a sitting president has gone out of his way to actively tank the market. It's simply It simply does not happen. Well, in fact, it happens about every 100 years because those are the two previous instances of this happening.
For one of these is 18.9 months. It's also worth saying, how bad has this day been? How bad was it Friday? How bad was it Thursday? Well, the S&P 500 over the last 5 years, if you'd invested your money starting 5 years ago, is up 91%. If you had invested your money simply in the last 5 months, I heard earlier today said on CNBC, then you might be in a bit of trouble. But most people don't invest for 1, 2, 3.
If you had invested your money at the inception of the Roman Empire, you would be up like 40,000%. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. But no, you were busy being born late, buddy. You were a fucking sperm in your dad's balls during the Roman Empire when you could have been out there investing in the DJI and in the S&P 500.
Or 5 months. And unless you need to pull your 401k out today, what's happened on Wall Street doesn't necessarily hurt you, as long as you're in for the big picture, the plan. I want you to take a look at the Dow since 2020 and what it's looked like over time. You can see where we are today, and you can see where the panic is, the last little blip at the edge of that screen. It's always worth understanding the big picture and not the panic.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to
But
subscribe.
what is this is what I don't understand. You're talking about a plan. Like, I got a plan, Arthur. We're going to go to Tahiti. And then what the fuck are we going to do when we land on Tahiti? We're going to get kidnapped by natives and have to fight our way out of a fucking castle. There is no plan, pal. There's nothing going on in the noggin of Donald Trump that leads anybody to be confident about any of this. The plan, I've been saying this for as long as I've been talking about tariffs on this fucking show. The plan is simple. You build up the sectors of whatever fucking domestic part of the economy you want, and then you do selective tariffs on services from those sectors that come from overseas. That's the plan. The plan isn't to just fucking throw a dart at a dartboard filled with numbers and countries and then apply the respective tariff to that country. Like, this is fucking stupid. You talk also about, worry about the market Friday, worry about the market Saturday. It's not necessarily that people worry about the market, but people worry about the economic uncertainty that this leads to. You worry about how you're going to pay your utility bill every month. You're worried about how you're going to pay your rent or your mortgage every month. You're worried about how you're going to afford fucking groceries every month, which are already wildly out of control. Republicans talk about how we lowered the price of eggs since Donald Trump got into office. Do you know where those fucking eggs came from? They came from overseas. We imported a surplus of eggs, and that's why the demand went down. But here's the thing. If we're getting eggs from Indonesia and you slap tariffs on Indonesia, the price of the egg is going to go up. Now, I understand that domestically there was the bird flu that wiped out a tremendous, I think like millions of birds. Donald Trump's response to that was fucking horrific. He cut the team that was working on the avian flu. But there are also goods and services and food products in particular that we cannot get here in the United States. I look at bananas. As a fucking banana enjoyer, those are going to go up. As a coffee drinker, the price of coffee is going to go up. Avocados, it's going to go up. It's not about just planting a fucking avocado tree in my backyard because I don't live in fucking Central America.